Oh, howdy all, grab yourselves a beer, it is time for some Path of Exile discussion. Today I wanted to make a video that outlines my suggested strategies for people going for 36 out of 40 challenges within the current Legion League. This will also discuss the challenges that I advise skipping, so it will also form the basis for a guide to 40 of 40 as well. I'll go into a little bit of detail over the ones that I suggest skipping. Just to start with though, the challenges that I feel are pretty easy for someone that is at the level of going for 36, I've skipped over. I'm going to skip over in this guide. So things like, for instance, completing these quests, which is doing a bunch of one of the earliest ones, doing a bunch of side quests, and part one that I covered in my video on suggestions for going for 12 of 40, I'm going to skip that entirely. Likewise, I'm going to skip things like Elder and Elder Guardians, even though that is it's a significant milestone boss encounter. You only need to do the white or yellow version, and you don't need to save the Shaper in the fights, so for that reason, this is something that I suggest people do in their first 24. So if you want to check out the 12 or 24 videos as well, they're up separately as well. The first one that I think people may have a little bit of trouble with is completing the Pantheon. So bringing that up inside the game client, this one is more of a collection challenge than an actual combat challenge. There's a number of maps you have to beat. You only need to stick the map in white alongside a Divine Vessel, which is something that you can do in just basically tier 13, 14, 15 maps. As long as you're capable of beating red maps, you'll be able to do the combat encounters here. The part that might be challenging though is if you're a solo self-found player, getting your hands on a total of 21, I believe it is. Something like 21, no, it's more than 21. Sorry, it's 20. You're going to need 20 of the Divine Vessel items. That's actually quite a lot, and so this is going to take a bit of trading in order to get that many. They're not particularly expensive, but requiring 20 of them is a lot, so I would actually start stockpiling these now. They're still pretty cheap at the moment, but they're the sort of thing that late in the league, when the supply of them is starting to constrict a bit, you're going to end up having a little bit more trouble sourcing those in any bulk quantities. So get them now, and otherwise you should have no trouble with the combat encounter side of this. First up, in terms of ones that are a little bit less trivial, is complete these encounters 3. Opening strongboxes, activating shrines, and defeating rogue exiles is going to be things you will do through natural mapping, and you will do it by the time that you're about level 93, 94, 95. The part that's less trivial is completing trades with Cadiro Parandus. This requires you to do 45 maps on average that have the Parandus mod affixed to them, and even then that requires that you've always got enough coins and that none of the offers are just so bad, like 7,000-8,000 coins for a 20 chaos unique that you feel you don't want to take them. So expect to maybe do 60 or 70 maps with the Parandus mod in order to get this. There are two main ways you can do this. The first way is to acquire Parandus scarabs in quantity and to use those to add Cadiro Parandus onto another map. It only has a 33% chance of spawning him, so there's a chance. The other one is to advance the Zana quest line far enough that you unlock the Parandus option in the map device. This requires you to be pretty close to the end of the Zana quest chain. I have to check this, but I believe you need to be onto the to Red Elder and Red Elder Guardians in order to unlock the Parandus mod. So this is going to be a non-trivial one, and it's the first of the various challenges that I do not recommend people that are going for a total of 24 even bother with at all. That said, it should be pretty achievable. Next up we have allocate Legion passives. Now this has changed since even the last video. When I put up the video for 24, we were under the impression that the Maraketh jewel, which is the restricting factor in acquiring this challenge, we were under the impression that this was pretty rare but not staggeringly rare. Then, after another content creator by the name of Grimro put out a video where he ran 50 of the 5-way fight, it became clear that the Maraketh jewel was incredibly rare. However, GGG did a little bit of investigation after seeing this, because I think they did not expect for this jewel to be as staggeringly rare as it was. And after they did their investigation, they realized that there was a bug that was causing it not to drop in the domain of timeless conflict. So the only ones that existed in the game were ones that had dropped inside maps. This meant that this was a really ugly achievement to get at for that brief period of time. The Mariketh jewel that you need to acquire in order to do this was more expensive than a headhunter for a period, and you needed to equip it. Then you could then allocate a couple of passives on the tree. Then you could trade the jewel away. This was a really nasty situation where you would need to put up a lot of collateral in a trade in order to basically borrow the jewel, rent the jewel from someone else in order to acquire this challenge. In any case, this has been fixed. That situation was caused entirely by a bug, and now that jewel will still be expensive. I wouldn't be surprised if it remains a couple of Exalted Orbs, maybe even as much as 5 or 10. But you don't need to buy this and then keep it forever. All you need to do is slot it in your tree, then take up one of the keystones. So you might need a couple of Regret Orbs to do this as well, and then just unallocate that keystone and then reallocate it. It should be easy, but you need to acquire for a short period of time an expensive item. You're free to trade it away afterwards though, so it's not as bad as some of the historic challenges that used to be real economic challenges. One that's been talked about a little bit in the past was the Abyss League. Abyss League had a challenge for identify a 2-socket unique abyssal item. Now, if you're familiar with Abyss mechanics, you'll know that the various liches, which are the bosses of the abyssal depths, that are usually when you complete an abyss, you got a slim chance. I feel like it's maybe 1 in 6, 1 in 7 of getting access to the abyssal depths after you complete the abyss. And then once you go into that, you have perhaps another 1 in 7 chance of getting a lich, and it will always drop a unique item, but most of the time it will drop it with 1 abyssal socket, sometimes with 2. The 2-socket ones were considerably more rare than the 1-socket ones. And so during the Abyss League, there was a challenge to identify a 2-socket one. Now, during that league, I sold an unidentified 2-socket gloves, Tomb Fist gloves, for 10 exalts. And then someone went and identified it and then sold it back to me for 30 chaos. So that gives you a sense as to just how much people were willing to pay in order to get these challenges done. And apparently towards the end of Abyss League, that unidentified 2-socket Tomb Fist would have been going for as much as 25, 30, even 35 exalts. The difference here, though, is that with one item, you only need 1 Mariketh jewel, and then your entire guild, assuming you trust each other, and you do need a lot of trust in this, you can pass it around between yourselves and do it. The other 4 jewels should be easier to acquire in trade leagues. However, if you're playing in solo self-found, this will be a tough one to get. This is going to be one of the ones that if you're playing in solo self-found, I think you might want to skip this entirely. Maybe you'll be able to get all 5 of them, but you will need to run a lot of the domain of timeless conflict. Next up we have the sextants. Complete maps with sextants, and you'll see there's 9 different sextant modifiers, 11, new sextant modifiers that were added in this league, and you're going to need to run 9 of them and complete the map. So you need to kill a map boss. Most of these will be pretty easy when you get them. The challenge here is just basically using a lot of red sextants, and you will need to use your red sextants on red maps as well. If you're using a shaped atlas strategy, you will probably have your Elder Orb somewhere, and you can use red sextants on your Elder Orbed map. Red sextants can roll all of these, yellow sextants can't quite roll all of them, and white sextants, there's a fair number of them that they can't roll. So in any case, that's one that will be an option to do, and in fact I think this is pretty much mandatory if you're going for 36. So keep hold of your sextants and use them liberally to do this. You won't get enough sextants to sustain during normal gameplay, but they do drop in a lot of places. They do drop if you run enough maps. You're just going to need to run a lot. Okay, next up we have Encounters 4, which is the... So complete these Encounters 4, which is eluding me here. There, no, it's not Complete Legion Encounters, it's one above Complete Legion Encounters, that's why I can't see it. Here we have defeat a bestiary boss, which is pretty easy. Defeat a delve boss in an area of 75 or higher without flares. That should be pretty easy in terms of combat difficulty for someone, for someone that's going for 36. And finding one, they're not that rare. Not using flares can be a little tricky. You will need to have maximum darkness resist, and you'll need to be quite conscious of the boss's moves and how you can create light during quiet periods in the fight. But the good thing with the delve bosses is that if you're worried about them, you can always attempt the fight and then Alt F4 out of it if you realize that you're out of your depth, and then just come back a bit later. The other thing is that when you find a delve boss in monster level 75 areas, you will be able to just burn them down really, really, really fast with a powerful character and largely ignore their mechanics. Defeat a Lich in an area of 80 or higher should be pretty easy, but requires you to run Abyss on a lot of your maps throughout, basically throughout your mapping. So just to demonstrate what you're going to be doing here, you just bring up the game client completely, and just use Zana's Abyss mod on your maps, and this will add an additional Abyss to that map. You're going to need to do that quite a bit, and that will then enable you to find enough abysses to realistically find that delve boss that you need. The one here that might be a little bit harder is defeating Abaxith. Abaxith is a very dangerous boss that comes from Beyond content. So this can be maps that have been rolled to have the Beyond affix, or it can be maps that have been given Beyond through other means, and you'll get a particularly large number of Beyond bosses in the delve mines. If you find it's quite rare for areas to have the Beyond affix, but when they do, you will get a lot of Beyond monsters there, just because of the incredible density of the delve mines. In any case, Abaxith's an absolute terror when you get him. I feel he's about 1% of Beyond bosses, so if you kill about 100 Beyond bosses, you probably will have encountered Abaxith. He is really dangerous. Don't be afraid to ask other players for help in actually fighting him, unless of course you found him in the delve mines, in which case you're on your own, you can't get anyone else. Now, next up we have unique strongboxes. These challenges are not fun. This is one of those challenges where you need to find 7 different very, very, very rare random things within maps. Now, if you're in a trade league, I suggest that every time you get one of these, that you sell it to other players. So what you'll need to do is then just announce in the channel Trade 820, hey, I've got a Callum's Cache, 20 chaos for credit, and people can then join your group, use up one of your map portals, pay you 20 chaos. You do have no recourse if they scam you, but most people will be honest. And they give you 20 chaos, and then you tap the strongbox once everyone's in the map, you kill all the mobs, and whatever loot drops, usually it's just whoever takes the loot gets it at that point. In any case, these are not staggeringly rare, but they are pretty rare, and needing 7 out of 11, this is going to be one that you're going to have a very hard time if you're playing solo self-found to pull this one off. However, if you're playing in trade enabled, you'll probably find that you might find 5 different ones, of which you find a couple of them 2 or 3 times. In that case, sell off the ones that you get that are excess, and buy the other ones from other players in Trade 820. Once more, there is a slim chance of getting scammed there, but generally speaking, that is, I won't say it's rare, but it's somewhat uncommon. Solo self-found though, your only option here is just going to be to run more and 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 more maps, and eventually you'll find them all. You'll find your necessary 7, but it will take you quite some time. I'm not a fan of that challenge. Now, Encounters 5 is hard modes on bosses. Here we have defeat Amala the Widow in Sunken City when you are affected by 5 or more stacks of Covered in Webs. Covered in Webs is a stacking debuff that she'll give out if you're standing in the wrong place. So you will need to deliberately stand in the wrong place when she's low on life. Culling Strike will make this a lot easier, and once you just keep tabs on your debuffs counters. Once you see 5, boom, kill her off with a Culling Strike secondary attack. So you've got your main attack, you whittle her down to say 5-8%, and then you've got a secondary attack that can be used at range, and you just fire it off when she's very low on life. Defeat the Cleansing Light in the Basilica map when no statues are in their starting positions. This one's all about taking some time, taking your sweet time in this fight. You'll need to prolong the fight, so don't blitz Innocence down. Let Innocence activate his statues and play Tetris with them. All of them need to play Tetris, and then you're fine. Defeat Vision of Justice in an Orchid map. So this is the Goddess of Justice, the one of the bosses of the Eternal Labyrinth, while you are affected by an Offering of Judgment. I believe the Offering of Judgment is the green beam that she fires at you. This is a damage over time that feels like it scales up over time. In any case, what you're going to want to do here is get her down pretty low in life, then just kite around, run circles around her. Eventually she'll fire a beam at you, and then at that point, boom, kill her off. If it turns out that I'm wrong and it's a different effect that's called Offering of Judgment, there's also purple shit on the ground and red shit on the ground, then just try those as well. But I think it's the green shit on the ground that is the key to this fight. Or the green shit, it's the green laser beam between her and you. So that should be pretty easy to do. That's going to be one of the easiest ones here. Defeat Woad Mockery of Man in Defiled Cathedral map while no statues are in their starting positions. This is exactly the same as the Basilica one, except it's an easier boss. So you're just basically doing the same thing. Next up we have Complete Timeless Conflict 1. This is a challenging boss killing and trash killing combination fight. The main thing here is you need to do the 5-faction fight. The 2 factions, 3 factions, and 4 factions are somewhat red herrings because, yeah, you can gain some progress towards this, but the 5-faction fight determines whether or not you get the achievement. The 5 factions fight is generally considered to be a fair bit harder than Shaper, but not at the sort of level of a, say, 800 depth delve or of an all or something like that. It's somewhere in the Shaper to Uber Elder range. You're going to need to go into the Domain of Timeless Conflict using all 5 emblems, and then kill each general at least once. In terms of strategies for this, the best way is going to be to find a group that are farming this and join them. If you're able to do that, it'll be staggeringly good XP. You will be helping them get more loot, so they'll be reasonably happy with that. However, you may need to provide them some sort of currency that defrays the cost of them running the instance. So that's one option that you've got. Alternately, you can just save up the 5 yourself, test with a 3-faction one, make sure you can do it, then test with the 4 factions with higher monster level, and then finally test with the 5 factions. You will get more time for that as well than you get for the 2, 3, and 4, but you will also need it because the fight is a lot harder. Next up we have complete 8 maps with 8 mods. This is just 30 red maps. This one should be pretty straightforward if you're someone that is going for 36, but you will definitely need to do it. There's no skipping this one. Now, next up we have Complete Legion Encounters 5. This is a fairly hard combat encounter that is all about clear speed. You're going to need to hit everything in a single encounter. Your best bet to do this is to pick a constrained map, something like Toxic Sewer, where there's not very many places that monsters can hide, where the corridors are thin, monsters are all clumped together. Run a bunch of them, and eventually you will find you'll get an excellent layout where you'll be able to hit everything on there. Your key goal is to hit all of both factions in a single encounter. That's the hard part. The other 5 are reasonably easy, but that last one is the hard one to get. In any case, low-level grinding will get you over the line, but it will take you some time. You'll notice I haven't got around to getting that one yet. Next up we have complete map tiers. And this is a massive grind one. This is one I suggest that if you are playing in Trade League, you skip this one. Alternately, if you're playing in solo self-found, I'm sorry, you're going to need to do this because some of the others, random numbers, are just not going to work in your favor. For instance, you're just not going to get the unique strongboxes one, and so you're going to need to substitute this. This is just all about doing 1,000 red maps. If you do 1,000 red maps and kill the bosses, then you are complete. If you aren't doing red maps, you could conceivably do 1,500 to 1,700 yellow maps and get over the line, or you can mix and match. In any case, run lots of maps and you'll get there. You'll get this well before you reach level 100 if that's your goal, and we'll talk about that when we get to the endgame grinds. Complete unique maps. This is going to be probably the hardest one that you're going to have to do. This will be your number 36 if you are solo self-found. But if you're in a trade-enabled league, this will be pretty easy. You need to do 15 and 19 of the unique maps that are found on the Atlas. And looking down the list, a couple of these are hard. The ones that are mechanically challenging or difficult combat encounters, Hall of the Grandmasters Hall of the Grandmasters is a reasonably brutal map that a lot of builds it really hard counters a lot of popular builds. And especially in this league where players are often running melee. Hall of the Grandmasters is a PvP themed map, and you'll be put up against a whole lot of player submitted characters in there. In any case, that one's hard, and then at the same time, Doriani's Machinarium is hard to acquire, Perandus Manor is hard to acquire, the Putrid Cloister is hard to acquire, and Vintar Square is hard to acquire. Out of those 5 maps, you need to do one, and you also need to do all of the rest. I think that should be very manageable in a trade league. You can just buy the ones that you're missing, and perhaps pay someone that's built their character to hard counter Hall of the Grandmasters, pay them in order to complete that map for you. In any case, it's not a particularly difficult encounter. It's not a particularly difficult challenge to get in trade leagues, but in solo self-found, you're going to need these things to drop for you. The other places that you can get unique maps, make sure that you turn in your The Encroaching Darkness divination cards. They'll give you a random unique map. And also your bestiary, in the menagerie, there is a fairly common beast that can be sacrificed at the blood altar to give you a random unique map as well. So those are a couple of other ways that you can get yourself a bit of a boost in solo self-found towards acquiring those unique maps. Your last resort in solo self-found is to use your ancient orbs on the unique maps that you get duplicates of. So, you know, when you get your 4th Pillars of Arun for the league, hit it with an ancient orb and hope that it turns into something that you haven't otherwise acquired. Okay, we have Encounters 6. This is all about Atzuri in the Temple of Atzoatl. Completing the beachhead should be relatively easy. You will need to source a beachhead map, which can be a little bit of a pest. There is a divination card that drops for them, and in addition, there are Harbinger orbs do drop a fair bit more than they used to just in the normal game. Additionally, the Legion content does drop complete beachheads occasionally, so you've got a reasonable chance of getting that. Defeating the Power Council is pretty reasonable. That one is just a matter of running your prophecies, so all your silver coins, keep using them. Eventually you'll get all of the chains done, and then at that point, the Power Council fight is a bit of an anticlimax. It's far easier than actually getting access to it is. Unlocking Veiled modifiers is just a case of doing your daily Jun quests every day. I'm not even level 90 and I pretty much have that. But defeating Atzuri in the Temple of Atzoatl, you need to spawn her first. This is horrible. Horrible, 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 horrible. You will need to ruthlessly prioritize upgrades that lead towards the Royal Throne Room. You will need to, every time you run Elva's incursions, you will need to prioritize them over everything else, even upgrades that would be quite good. This one's going to be a pain in the ass to get, and for that reason, it's one that I've marked as if you're if you're in a trade league, you might want to consider this to be your 37th or 38th challenge. So the ones that you feel like you're very close to getting, but you don't actually quite get there. Your other option, though, if you're in a trade league, is simply to buy this from someone else. Again, Trade Channel 820, where people transact an item of something of value for something of value. If you've got a service in game, for instance, if you've spawned Atsuri in your temple, there will be a lot of people that will be happy to, in order to save themselves the hassle of going through upgrading the Royal Throne Room, they'll be happy to throw an Exalt at you for one of your portals into the temple, and then you can work together on killing Atsuri. A very important thing if you group up for this, Atsuri gets a lot harder when there are more players in the zone. The massive fire blasts that she casts do something that's a little bit counterintuitive. When she casts her empowered fire blast, she'll cast one centered on herself, and she'll also cast one centered on each player in the room. It is absolutely critical that if you're doing this with other players, that you stand fairly close together at all times, except when actively dodging an empowered fire blast. So keep that one in mind if you're running this with multiple players. Next up, we have the Complete Timeless Conflict 2. I discussed this in the 24 map because I think it is a 24 challenge, although it can certainly be one of your 36 or one of your sort of 25 to 36 category as well. This is just all about running lots of Domain of Timeless Conflict, but you can do all of these realistically in the two emblem Domain of Timeless Conflict, so you don't need to be running it in 5 emblem ones. And it will also go up a lot faster. You'll rocket up this and get your completion really quickly if you run the Domain of Timeless Conflict as a group. Next up, we have Deadly Encounters, which is a lot of the hardest bosses in the game. You need to kill Atsuri in the Alluring Abyss, which is a pain in the ass to get access to. Remember that the Sambodi's Vow divination card exists and drops a lot from Betrayal content. And that will help you get access to the mortal fragments you require in order to run the Alluring Abyss. Additionally, the Legion content drops a lot of mortal fragments, especially when you run it at high monster levels. So for instance, if you're running high red maps, you will quite often get mortal fragments there. Defeat a breach boss in their domain at an area level of 80 or higher. This is all about boss killing. Just killing Chayula is enough, a standard Chayula's Breachstone, but the cheapest way to do this is going to be to join a group for a Tull's Pure Breachstone, or a Zoph's Pure Breachstone, or an Escher's Pure Breachstone. I wouldn't suggest Escher's Pure Breachstone just because players often skip the bosses on those, but Zoph's and Tull's, because they drop pretty good loot from the bosses, often public parties that will charge a fee in order to join them will run these zones for everyone in the group to get XP, and then one or more people will stay and fight the boss in order to try and get the Pandemonious amulet from Tull, or to get Zoph's blood from Zoph. In both cases, stick around and you'll be able to get credit for this challenge. Next up, we have Complete Zana's questline, and ultimately this is all about killing Uber Elder. I think the other parts of this are pretty straightforward. Mastermind in 83 and Vale Temple. Complete the entire questline given by Zana. This just means kill Uber Elder. And that's a big challenge to get to, but it's something that I think you probably know how to do if you're going for 36. Finally, we have complete endgame grinds. Now, let's discuss these. If you're going for level 100, and you're only going to do this if you're going for 40 or 40. Then you should be joining Breachstone rotations and expect to be paying through the nose. But, you'll be paying 15 chaos per run or something like that. It'll add up, but you will rocket up XP. You'll get there quickly. The other option is running the five-way Domain of Timeless Conflict, which has extraordinary amounts of XP in it, but is considerably harder on the combat encounters than even a Chayula's Pure Breachstone. The other budget option that is worth checking is Chayula's Enriched Breachstones. These drop quite a bit from the... Enriched and Charged. These drop quite a bit from the Legion content, They're not as in demand as Chaola's Pure Breach Stones because they're not quite as good XP an hour, but they are still pretty damn good and they far eclipse maps. The other option for level 100 is just simply to combine it with doing the 400 Abysses that you'll see here, and also the 10,000 map tiers. Just run high tier maps and add Zana Abyss on all of them, and you will rocket up in XP over time doing that. Second, we have Defeat Uber Elder. Now this is very profitable, but also is something that will take a lot of time. You'll need to spawn Uber Elder each time. This will probably, doing 40 kills, I believe will take longer than getting to level 100 in the current state of the game. However, where getting to level 100 via Breach Stones will result in you hemorrhaging currency, defeating Uber Elder 40 times will result in you gaining a lot. On average, you'll get 10 Watcher's Eye Jewels. If you sell them unidentified, you can expect 4 exalts per jewel. If you identify them, you'll have a massive variance. These will sell for only 30 chaos if they're bad, up to quite literally more than 1,000 exalts. So you're talking in the 5 to 7 mirror range if you get an absolutely godly one. Most of the popular used ones will have one excellent mod and one serviceable mod, and these will sell for about 25 exalts. Third up, we have the easiest option on the endgame grinds, which is to complete 400 Abysses. And as I say, this is something you'll do in maps, and it's just all about running lots of them using Zana's Abyss mod. If you're going to go for this, remember it's going to cost you 800 Chaos Orbs, which seems like it's so many that you might want to liquidate other currencies in order to buy them, but you will be getting enough raw Chaos Orbs that you probably won't need to do that. So I don't think this is going to serve as a big Chaos Orb sink in the economy. Next up, we have complete Dark Shrines in the endgame Labyrinth. Yes, fuck this one. Do not even think about doing this. This is going to be absolute hell. 400 Dark Shrines is something like 200 Labyrinth runs on most days. Some days is 133. But it's as if 133 Labyrinth runs isn't bad enough. You're having to go out of your way and do extra things on the way. Yeah, no, just don't even think of this. This one is a nightmare. And as I think that my comments in my spreadsheet should probably say everything that there is to say about this. This is a horrible grind. This will not be fun. This will make you hate life. This will make you want to uninstall Path of Exile and never even see your totem pole before you even get it. Complete Delve encounters at an area level of 80 or higher in the Azurite Mine times 500. 500 encounters is not all that many. It's a large number, but you can do these pretty fast. This is probably something you can achieve on a weekend if you have if you know how to get Sulfite quickly. So you're going to need to play a fair bit, but this should also be a lot of fun, and you should be, once you get to area level 83, so tier 16 maps start dropping, you should find that this is actually quite profitable as well. Defeat factions in the Domain of Timeless Conflict. This one I feel is very reasonable in trade and very unreasonable in solo self-found. So in summary, if you're going for 40 of 40, you're going to need to keep the following ones in mind. In solo self-found, everything is going to come down to, do you get lucky and acquire the right jewels for the stupid Allocate Legion passives quest. I'm just looking for that now. It's Allocate Legion passives, there it is. Everything is going to come down to getting the Maraketh version of this, because it is the rarest of them all. If you get that, then you're not brickwalled on the rest of the challenges. If you don't get that, then there's no real point bothering with anything else. In terms of your actual chances of getting it, we don't know as yet, but there will need to be some serious tests where people do hundreds and hundreds of runs. But I think you'll find that it's there's a few % chance of getting it each time that you run the 5-way fight with the Maraketh general in there. You might even find that your Maraketh emblems may be best to use just as a 2 general fight. I don't know. We'll have to test that extensively. In any case, that's going to be the biggest block, and your next biggest block is probably going to be reaching level 100 and level 100 here. and doing the 200 factions in the domain of timeless conflict. They're going to be the worst challenges in solo self-found. If you're playing in a trade-enabled league, I think you're going to find the most difficult will be endgame grinds, will be costly and will be grindy, and running the 10,000 map tiers will be pretty long and difficult. Other than that, though, I actually think that these challenges are pretty easy compared to some of the previous leagues. There's no tremendous skill tests like the Cortex hard modes that existed in Synthesis, or the all hard modes that existed in Delve. There's no tremendous skill tests, and there's no serious luck requirements like the damage all of the obtaining, what was it from Breach? Obtain a splinter from a Breach Lord in a map. None of these are present, so it should be pretty reasonable. I think 36 should be very doable this league. If you've got any questions though, fire them away below. Otherwise, have a good one.